Thanks, everyone, for being here. My name is Yiying Liu. And I'm going to talk about how to design for a global audience. So how many of you here have seen this image? Raise your hand, please. Let me have a look. Raise it high. OK, great. For those of you who have no idea what it is, this is called the Twitter farewell. Every single time the social media app, Twitter, went down, people will see this illustration on the internet, either on phone or website. So what's really interesting is it's actually the first error message that really makes users happy. And you can see the feedbacks from users from around the world. And it also gains a lot of social media loves from mainstream media. Masher will actually call this the icon of Web 2.0. What's also really interesting and fascinating to me is that we have audience from around the world celebrating the illustration, and they are using different technique to actually re-illustrate this in their own way. So these are all from user-generated content from New York, graffiti art, on a street art. We also have, this is actually a Lego designer from Denmark, and he made it into a Lego open source for kids. We also have in Singapore the, how many Singapore here? Oh, excellent. So in Singapore, the government was actually using it for the public transit, and then San Francisco on a newspaper. And why do we stop on posters? Let's have some cakes. We have cakes. We also have drinks. So on the left is actually a farewell pale ale beer label contest, and this is the winner. On the right was actually, they have a farewell martini in New York City. I had 7. I was very smashed. So we also have fashions. We have also kind of high fashions, from eyeliner, makeup tutorial, to hats for Halloween's. And my favorite thing is this. Are you ready? Somebody loved it so much, I actually tattooed it on the leg. And that's actually made into CNN News. What's also very interesting is how many of you actually know Conan O'Brien? How many friends from Conan here? Woo! Excellent. So Conan O'Brien even commissioned the artist to make an illustration for him, and also thanked her on the internet. And the next slide is actually Conan's actual tweet to her, and that's actually me. So my name is Yiying Liu. Yi means happy, and Yi means creative. I was born in Shanghai, China, and moved to Sydney, Australia when I was a teenager. I studied in Sydney, Australia at UTS and UNSW, and I also went to St. Martin's in London. Now I'm based in San Francisco, and this explains the reason why my accent is all over the place. So don't worry, the system is not down. So if you really think about it, all the things that you've seen just now is no difference in the essence than this particular image, because the content pretty much is the same. It's basically telling the user that something is wrong with the technology, right? So the technology itself, the error message of the traditional blue screen of death is no difference in terms of content compared with the Twitter farewell, right? But what's really interesting is here, there's a lot of visual here. There's not a lot of actual linguistic things. So that's the takeaway. The takeaway is a picture worth 1,000 words. A lot of times, if you want to communicate with global audience, it's better to really explain it in a visual way, because that transcends the linguistic barrier. So this is also really exciting. We see more and more large companies inspired by this and made their own arrow page with the artworks, and have more artists working with tech companies to create more art for tech companies to communicate better with the users. Now, this is really exciting, and I actually going to announce this very soon. Hopefully, it's going to be coming soon on your phone. So the dumpling emoji, the takeout box, the chopstick, and the fortune cookie are going to be on your phone in probably a month or 2. Excited? OK. Yay! Thank Thank you. So I actually made this. I made these 4 illustrations, and this is not going to happen without my friend Jennifer Aitley. So Jennifer and I, we met in New York 8 years ago, actually at Shorty Awards, where I was a winner in Shorty Awards in design. And Jennifer and I, we bonded in 2015 over having dumplings together. So she sent me this picture of having pot sticker dumplings. And I was very excited, and I tried to reply with a dumpling emoji, only fine, there's no dumpling emoji on my phone. So I was like, I'm so surprised there's no dumpling emoji. And she's like, good point. And the conversation goes nowhere. And then I went back to my table and realized, wait a minute, I'm a designer. I can do this. So I made the dumpling emoji, and it also blings, and that's why I call it the bling bling dumpling. Thank you. So then we realized that dumpling is actually very universal. Georgia has kakali, Japan has gyoza, Korea have mandu, and Italy have ravioli. Polish people have pierogi. Russian people have pelmeni. Argentinian people have empanadas, and Jewish people have kreplech. Chinese people have pot stickers, and momos are from Tibet, and let me get it. What else? Do you know? Tibet and Nepal. Yes, excellent. Good work. And manti from Turkey. So we actually grouped together with a bunch of friends, and we formed this very serious kind of like community called Emoji Nation, and I also designed the logo. So we actually realized that the people actually control the language is actually called the Unicode Consortium. So this is a non-for-profit organization that is based in the South Bay. And we also went over and present this to them. They're very excited, and they say, well, we love your dumpling emoji, but we also want to make sure that it's actually consistent with all the other emojis, because most of the other emojis doesn't have a face. Actually, I said, no, if you look at the fries, it actually has a face on it. But anyway, so I went back and I changed it, become faceless, but I wasn't very happy with it. And they also said, yes, we can improve it, because if you really look at it, a lot of food emoji are 45-degree orientated. So I redesigned it and made it 45-degree. And they came to me and said, well, we would love to have you design the chopstick, the takeout box, and the fortune cookie. So I designed these 4. But what's really interesting is when I presented with the Unicode Consortium, Alalita, my friend actually from Unicode Consortium as a board member, tweeted online. And at the same time, it's really amazing that we have a friend, Bobby, who's a publisher as well. I actually didn't know anything about Bobby, but he tweeted online and said the cross chopstick actually means impolite in China and Japan to the elders. I was born in China and I actually had no idea that this is actually a tradition in the past. So in order to carry on the torch, I redesigned it and I did my research and confirmed this is actually true. And so now these 4 emojis are going to be on your phone in a month or 2. And it's going to be in fall 2017 on your phone, on the iOS and other software. So you're welcome. So now, we're going to move on to this really fun project I love. This is actually not my design. This is the original logo of a real estate company in Australia. What's really interesting is it's a bilingual company, and they wanted to target more Asian investors and also Asian buyers. So they came to me and they say, hey, Yiying, we would love to have a combination of the home in English, and also we wanted to embed the Chinese character into the home 789. And so here's the challenge. I realized there's nothing in common with the Chinese and English. So I did some research, and it's really interesting. If you look at the Chinese character, the second one from Jingwen is actually underneath the roof, there's a pig. So our ancestors believed that if we have a pig underneath the roof, we have a home. So what's really interesting, and I kind of try to abstract the notion of this item that underneath the roof, and I try to put the 7 and 9 together, and this is the very first draft, which is presented to the CEO. But to my surprise, the CEO came back to me and said, I would like to actually ask my advisor, who is a feng shui master, and he probably will give you some good feedbacks. And I've never, ever worked with a feng shui master before, so I said, okay, I am up for it, and I would love to see what Feng Shui Master actually tell me. So what's really interesting is the Feng Shui Master, we actually WeChatted, and he told me that in Feng Shui, a lot of people like things that are very organic. So we should probably get rid of the very sharp corners. So, okay, well, the other thing is, he said, we want things that are open, and the 8 is not very open, and also the 一撇一捺 is kind of redundant. So how do you actually integrate it together? So I took it as a challenge, and I took his advice, and I kind of reiterated 79. Don't worry, this is not the final yet, and I showed it to him. He said, it's good, but I don't like the 宝盖头. I don't like the top roof. It's still kind of not right. It's not integrated very well. So I thought, well, how do I make it integrated, but in the same time not losing the meaning? So I started to do research, and I went back to the actual research of the evolution of the character Jia, and I realized the 宝盖头, which is the radical, in Chinese we call it 边旁不熟. The 宝盖头in Chinese, it's amazing. So Chinese is 宝盖头, and the translation of that is called treasure hijab. I didn't make it up. Google actually told me that. So I was like, okay, so what is the treasure exactly? The treasure is actually the yuanbao. So yuanbao is the Asian currency that used in China throughout the Asian times. Then I was looking at the yuanbao character, and I came up with the abstraction of the yuanbao, and this is how I got the solution of the redesign of the bao gaito in the first place. So this is how the character Jia came about, or the character home in Chinese came about. And this is how the character was being used in different scenarios on the ads. And finally, this is the actual logo type. Now, I'd love to also show you one of my favorite projects. It's actually a project that I worked with Disney Resort. I worked for the recruitment campaign for Disney Shanghai. So this is Disney Shanghai opened in 2016. And in 2014, when they came to me, the actual theme park actually looks like this. So they came to me, and the most important thing along the way is to find the best people to be working for the theme park. So they needed to come up with a recruitment campaign that can recruit people to the actual resort. So they're aiming to recruit 10,000 people across China. And they already have determined what character needs to be there, which is Mickey, represent for magic, Simba represent for growth, Mulan represent for courage. Also, she is a Chinese representative, and Elsa represent for dream, and Snow White and Seven Dwarfs represent for teamwork. And fun fact, Snow White is actually coming from a valley called Emery Valley. So I would say Snow White represents for the female leadership in the valley. So in the Shanghai Disney Resort, they already have these 5 characters being determined, and they wanted to make it authentically Disney and distinctly Chinese. And I was looking at it, it's actually quite hard to find the consistency of all the artworks, because they are very different genres, stories, and also, for God's sake, they're even different species, right? So how I'm going to find a way to make them look consistent and also look Chinese enough, and also simplify enough to have all the characters to be applied on different merchandise and collaterals. So I drew the inspiration from the Chinese paper cut and also the traditional clothing from China. And so this is the final poster for Mickey. And if you look closer, you'll be able to see the Xiangyun, which is the lucky crowd, which is the shape of the cloud in the Mickey Mouse. But also, my favorite thing is we also integrated the tiger shoes onto the shoes of the Mickey Mouse. And Simba symbolized for growth. And the challenge here, if you put the little Simba and the big Simba together, people will think the adult Simba is Mufasa, and they get confused. So I found a solution which is using the traditional African totem and face paint, and I kind of integrate the little Simba, which is the actual totem, onto the body of the large Simba. So it's integrated together to tell the story of growth. And Mulan, obviously, a lot of people will probably hear, if you speak Chinese, you know her name actually means the magnolia flower. But to a lot of Western audience, they actually didn't know the magnolia flower is actually the name Mulan in Chinese actually means in English. So I integrated the Mulan flower onto the actual artwork in the background and also in the foreground. Elsa, in this case, I was drawing a lot of inspiration from the paper cut in the past, and then also integrate the paper cut of the snowflake into the actual artwork. And finally, we have Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, which in this case is actually quite complicated. We're going to have all the characters together, integrated, and the inspiration I drew was from the forest. So we have the forest items and the leaf items and integrated together with the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So this is finally influation that happens in the actual campaign. We have people coming over to do the job interview and also on different posters. In fact, this campaign was so successful, we had about 70,000 people apply for the actual interview, and 10,000 people were being accepted from the program. And in the subway, and also, that's it. Thank you. This is Disney. Okay, this is the last example. This is actually one of my favorite examples. So stay here. So this is actually a startup company called Visually. This is their original logo. And they came to me in 2013. And at the time, they're one of the most famous platforms for infographics. But they wanted to pivot into a platform for creative content. So they're not just have the display of infographics, but also they want to have more content creators coming to their platform. And they wanted to have more animators, journalists, creative directors, developers, as well as designers. But in the same time, in order to really announce the creative content platform, they decided to come to South by Southwest and also having a booth in one of the South by Southwest big sort of booth area where they're actually competing with company like NASA, and they're directly across with the New York Times. So the challenge here is really how to illustrate and how to make the campaign so interesting that they will bring a lot of traction, but in the same time, simple enough to communicate the idea of now they become a content creator platform. And so basically, we're doing this whole Skype call together. And what I really got from the the CEO is in San Francisco, and the CMO is in Tel Aviv, in Israel. I was in Sydney, Australia at the time. So I kept on hearing them saying, content is king, content is king. And I said, well, if content is king, why don't we just visualize the content king? So I decided to make this into animation. And we have animated character of the content king holding the actual prism, because we don't want to change the logo and lose the initial branding equity. So I redesigned the kind of almost have it as a plug-in as the brand mascot for the campaign. We also reapplied the campaign into posters from around in town in Austin, Texas. We also have them as, the character. We cut them out and bring him to the music festival. And finally, we had a visually photo booth props. So I redesigned all these props and make them consistent with their branding and color. We also set up a photo booth, which is really awesome, that people could actually interact. So when people coming to their booth, they'll be able to take a photo, which is going to be uploaded on the app, and it's also being animated. Mind you, this is actually back in 2014. So at the time, Boomerang wasn't even born yet. So people got really excited, and they came over and they signed up for news, and also using their emails and phone numbers, and also share things on social media. So if you really think about it, the new content coming from the user became the new content, and the people who come and visit the booth really left their digital foot impression during the actual campaign. So the campaign itself became the new content, and also the team had a great time as well. This is actually a picture before we start the actual South by. They have all the props. By the end of the South by, all the props were gone. People love it so much, and it's good for us because less thing to carry back to San Francisco. So this is my takeaway. In 1996, content is king is actually a phrase being popularized by Bill Gates. Now, in 2017, 21 years later, I'd like to propose engagement is queen. When you put meaningful content and engaging form together, this is where the innovation happens. When you put tech and art together, this is where the magic happens. That's why I'm wearing purple today. So this is the takeaway. And in the age of globalization, please keep in mind that content is king, engagement is queen. If you really wanted to engage more global audience, a picture worth 1,000 words, and adding more colors. My name is Yiying Liu. This is my contact detail. Thank you so much.